Welcome, everybody, to the Streakers Island podcast. Now we can have an intro. Hello! Welcome back. I just wanted the 30 seconds. I want to see Dan's confused face because every time I don't play the intro right away, he looks like...
Yeah, what's going on, B?
But it is I, Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst, joined by Mr. Lane Dash and Dashco and Mr. More for your money.
Woo! Give Lane a lot of credit. He's outside bad air quality. Toughing it out.
That's right.
For people who are up in the Halton region, there is a air advisory. So be mindful, be careful, and check on your loved ones.
And your pets.
Yes. But truthfully, we were planning on doing a second CFL preview show, but we didn't get through everything at all yesterday.
We
weren't even close.
No,
because we may still have to do a third show with just our top players and Grey Cup predictions. But right now, the main focus is to talk about the Eastern Conference. But before we get into the Eastern Conference, I do want to address the injuries in Saskatchewan. So Rowan Milligan, best defensive player in the CFL.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Ouellette, arguably a top back in the CFL.
Mm-hmm.
And Schaefer Baker, one of Saskatchewan's best receivers, all went down with injuries in week one. That's tough, right? That's very difficult to handle that many injuries already in week one.
Do we get a bye in week two?
I'm not sure if they have the bye in week two. I'd have to look.
Because that would be great timing for them now.
Oh my gosh, would it ever? Because they have some big holes to fill now. They still want a good tight game. And I think Ottawa still needs to learn that they have a running back. I thought the Red Blacks didn't really use William Stanback as well as they should have and could have.
I was surprised by that.
Surprise, my trucker. I was also surprised. But I mean, at the end of the day, the Rough Riders are having the same issues they had last year, which is injuries. Remember, we talked about that, Lane, you and I, especially in the pregame in our preview part one, that if the Rough Riders have a good season, they have to stay healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And, I know football is all about injuries. You're going to see injuries, every day. There's going to be tons of injuries every game, but that's a tough blow to lose all those players like week one, just like that. But mind you, they were able to have a really strong second quarter there with 17 unanswered points and only holding Ottawa to 7 points there off their opening possession. So I think Saskatchewan did a good job, containing the Ottawa Red Blacks. There was a bit of a late game push there with the 12 points. They only lost by 5. But I want to comment on what Dan said, and Dan kind of nailed it right on the head about the running backs, right? You looked at the running backs, William Steinbach, 9 carries, only averaging 2.9 yards per rush. That's not good enough in football. You made Drew Brown do all the work there with his 400-plus passing yards, and I get he has that ability to do that based on the statistics of his season. But again, I feel like this with the Ticats, they did this too. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? You need a lot of the offense to kind of fluctuate on the field, and it felt like last night, the Ottawa didn't really have that run support or the running game to help them support them to get them back in this game.
And when you mentioned Drew Brown, who I thought had a phenomenal night, he was limping at the end of that game. So watch, if you're an Ottawa Red Blacks fan, you're very concerned seeing Drew Brown not looking very comfortable at the end of that game. So let's hope he's okay. And obviously stay logged in on the Streakers On podcast, and we will update you as soon as we hear more information on all those injuries from that game. But I think it's time we get into the Eastern Conference. This is the conference we didn't really get into. We talked about the Ottawa Red Blacks yesterday, but obviously because they were playing. But now we got to get into the rest of the East. And I want to start off with the team that I think made the most changes and the most big changes in the East. And it's the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Hamilton Tiger Cats are very, very, very busy this offseason. Of course, we have 2 Argo fans on the cast and a Ticats fan on the cast. So luckily we can't fight each other, yell Oski wee wee and go Toronto Argos go. But I can't. All love, man. But
all love on the island.
Lane, how excited are you as a Ticats fan to see what Kenny Lawler can do to this offense?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I saw that in preseason there. Him and Tim White look like it's going to be a strong duo there. And yeah, White struggled a little bit in game one there, but I feel like Bo Levi Mitchell, when he's healthy, and that's going to be a thing we're going to talk about, of course, is the healthiness. But I feel as long as he stays healthy, they've got a good chance. They were 7-11, and I feel like you looked at their record and the games they were like at least competitive in the games they lost, right? There were a lot of games there where, like you said, even though they started 0-3, they were probably the best 0-3 CFL team on the market there, and they just needed a few more pieces, right? Like it almost reminds me when we got like Chad Owens and Speedy B, like when we had that duo. Like when you have a good receiving combo, it just opens up the field for a lot more kind of like room to grow. And now you have such a strong quarterback, you get a strong trio there that even if your running backs aren't good, you got two strong guys who'll be able to go vertical down the field to get those balls and get those big first downs for the Ticats this year. So hopefully it should be a way better season. It looks like they might be pushing themselves back into hopefully that playoff territory this year.
And you know what, too? I think you talk about the offense there. And, Dan, I got to admit, I think you and I, both as Argo fans, were heartbroken to see Deshaun Amos go to Hamilton. But Hamilton adding Deshaun Amos, Reggie Stubblefield, who, by the way, is out for week 1 for Hamilton. No Stubblefield. But you added 2 really big pieces, one to your linebacking core and one to your defensive back core. Dan, how big of a difference do you think you could see in Hamilton's defense? They did at times allow a lot of explosive plays. I think a guy like Deshaun Amos makes a big difference in the backfield.
Deshaun Amos is a game changer. We know that as an Argo fan. We've witnessed it with our season tickets. We've witnessed it in the Grey Cups that the Argos won. He was always a great player. He's just on bad Calgary teams there. But I think Hamilton has a very good team this year. I forgot about Delaney's point. I forgot about Chad Owens as a tie captain at the very end there. So that was interesting. That was like a Chad Owens Argo legend, right? But, I think this Ticat team's going to be a lot better. And I think this Ticat team can get a home field in the playoffs. I really do. Don't forget, they beat the Argos all 3 times last season, and the Argos did win the Grey Cup. So this Ticat team is not as bad as people say. And the thing with Bo Levi Mitchell, I kind of laugh at it, is people said, he joined Hamilton, 3 or 4 years ago? And back then, people were like, oh, is he going to retire? Well, he's arguably the best quarterback in the league right now. Definitely the biggest veteran franchise quarterback in the league.
He's a game changer, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because you look at the early 2000s, for example, we had guys like Damon Allen and Anthony Covio and Ricky Ray and Smiley Hank. And we had franchise game-changing quarterbacks. And for a while there, about 10, 15 years, we didn't have that for a little bit. And now with guys like, even though Bo Levi Mitchell's kind of at the end of his career, you got Bo Levi Mitchell, Chad Kelly, VA, these are franchise game-changing quarterbacks. So it's nice. Not that it's all about the quarterback in the CFL, but it's nice that franchise quarterbacks are starting to become a factor again. So I think with that and the wide receivers that Lane mentioned and the defense that Jacob mentioned, I think we're going to be second in the East this year. I really do. I think we're really good.
Now, as much as this is weird for all of us pumping the Hamilton Tiger Cats tires, or at least this is for Dan and I, a concern I do have in Hamilton is the running back situation. Greg Bell being your starting back.
He did look good last season.
He did, but that was a small sample size. Now, you did bring in Jonathan Agustin, who is a 6-year veteran with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who never really got much of a shot because of Brady Oliveira just being the best back we've seen in the CFL in probably 10 years. But a running game is still a bit of a concern for me, and I'll be honest, I'm still a little uneasy about your offensive line in Hamilton. It struggled at times. It really struggled. At times it was great, but at times it struggled. I just think Hamilton needs to find a way to get some consistency in that position. I think quarterback and receiving core, you're very strong. We haven't even talked about Drew Olatarski yet, who is a big piece to this Hamilton Tiger Cat offensive group, right? He's a guy that can make some big catches in tight windows, and he's got a lot of experience. And I mean, we're also looking at a guy like Josh Johnston, who played 10 games for the Blue Bombers on that group, right? So I think their offense is pretty good. Again, when I say I'm uneasy about their offensive line, I mean, they did bring in Liam Dobson from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who is a guy that, he was named an all-star in the West Division last year. He really is expected to really take a leadership role on that offensive line. It's just tough to see will one big piece. I think there's a couple smaller guys they brought into the offensive line. But can one piece be a big difference in that O-line? Because if Bo Levi Mitchell has time, he is probably right up there with him. And I would say him and Chad Kelly as the two best deep threat quarterbacks in the CFL. Yeah. But Bo Levi Mitchell is not a quarterback that likes to move in the pocket. I think we can all agree on that. He likes to have
his age,
time to drink his coffee and throw the ball deep. Where you have guys like Chad Kelly and even Vernon Adams Jr. who can make those deep throws on the run. So if you don't have the big play from your offensive line to give him time, it could be an issue. I also wonder, too, about Hamilton's return game. Punt returns was kind of inconsistent last year for them as well. I mean, Holmes did a good job in and out of the lineup. Can he stay in that position? But, Dan, I hate saying this. I don't think Hamilton could just potentially be fighting for second in the East. I think they could be fighting for first.
They could be. We're that good.
I think you have the East is wide open this year, I really feel like. But Lane, I guess my big question for you as the Ticats fan is, do you feel more confident this year than you did last year?
Oh, 100%, right? Like the quarterback dynamic, even like, you talk about Bo Levi Mitchell, even if he struggles, right? We got Taylor Powell, and I got to admit, in the preseason, that kid looks phenomenal. Like if there's a future to keep him as the next, franchise starting quarterback, I think if he can grow into that role, he looks really good. He's really fast. He's got one heck of an arm there. You've got really good receiving core. You've got decent. The Ticats have always had a really good defense core. It's always kind of been like what you said, Jacob. The concern's really been on that O-line. So I want to see early how it's responding to the pressure from the other defensive lines across the league here. And I think as long as we can hold our line and give our team a chance to make those plays that we haven't had for many years, I really feel like that's been the core issue there of the Hamilton Ticats. But I like the things that we have in place, at least on the front ends, to help us get more pressure down the field, get some more action, get some more yards where we didn't have that in the passing years. And hopefully the defense, which has been, I feel, a real strength on the Ticats, continues to be a strength with the guys they've added now as well.
Yeah, Lane, I got to agree with you. I think overall, and Dan, I think the way you're talking about Hamilton potentially fighting for home field in the playoffs, I think we all agree Hamilton looks better this year.
For sure. And one thing I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Hamilton cut Tukuwawa, the backup quarterback, as the brother in the NFL?
Tunga Tugaloga, yes. He is now in the UFL.
And then did they cut Edwards as well?
Chris Edwards, he's been gone for a couple years now. I still cannot believe I'm sorry, Lane, but that was one of the dumbest things I thought Ticats could ever do is when they brought in Chris Edwards. The Argos got rid of him because he was a major problem fighting Hamilton Tiger Cat fans. And then Hamilton's like, get over here, buddy.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. I think the big difference with this Ticat group is they seem to cut some of the bad apples in the dressing room. True. They replace them with good players. When you talk about your defensive line, Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a defensive line you can't just fix with one player. I think the defensive line and the offensive line is a unit. Versus if you grab a running back, a quarterback, a wide receiver, one piece can really help that whole thing different. But with the line, I think you can't just fix it with one player. You need a unit.
It's tough, right? But I mean, I do think Hamilton, I agree with you, Dan. I think the culture's improved.
Yeah.
Going into this season. Even when we were at the Double Blue preseason game, this might sound weird. They weren't like trying to beat each other up as much, even between Hamilton and Toronto. I think Hamilton is realizing now that they needed a culture shift, and I think they've got it.
Yeah.
So my big question is for you now. I want to move on to the Alouette Jota Puma Bay. How are we feeling about the Montreal Alouettes? And I'm going to keep it a buck here. I am not confident in this group. I think this is the team in the East that I think will slip from last year.
I agree.
You know what? You lost Cody Fajardo on purpose. Yeah, you brought in McLeod Buffalo Thompson, and everyone's going on about this Davis Alexander. And I just don't know how I feel about Davis Alexander. Like, he put up good numbers in the Alouettes last year. Don't get me wrong, in the 5 games he played. But that's the problem. In the 5 games he played.
Yeah. I think Montreal could be the team in the East missing the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I could honestly see that.
I think I really think that's what's going to happen. Like, I don't know why they got rid of Cody Fajardo. I mean, yeah, so they beat Toronto in that Eastern Final. Yeah, you could argue that, but I don't think I lost it just on him, right?
No, and
I
like
think one reason why Toronto won that is how Nick Arbuckle handled coming in halfway through the game. I mean, you can't blame that on Cody Fajardo.
Like,
no, I mean, Lane, you are bringing up here Davis Alexander's stats, and in the 5 games he played, it's 5 he started, and he won all 5. And those are good numbers, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 8.9 average. Yeah, like
the end fact of the floating hat.
Oh, so I just reading here. Like 1,300 yards in 5 games. That's pretty impressive.
And, you know, also, too, as Lane's pointing out, this showing his rushing ability, too. He did have 3 rushing touchdowns as well. It's just tough, right? You're bringing in someone with very little experience. And I'm going to be honest here. He did not look good in the preseason.
No, he didn't.
Now, it was raining and blah, blah, wet field, blah, blah, blah. So that's been the excuses I've been seeing and reading everywhere. No. Maybe he will shut me up against the double blue tonight, and he'll show that, no, he is the guy. He is him. He is him. But I don't know.
Like you look at those 6, like, yeah, it looks inconsistent when you look at some of his stats. Like, there's a game he started, right? Only 67 passing yards. Like,
yeah.
Like 67. Like, he's had some 200s here. He's also had some like 170. Like, that's not a lot right now.
No.
But do you know what is a lot? 4 instead of 3. So you know who we need to bring in? Mr. Chazzy!
Woo!
What's up, boys?
Yeah.
I heard it was a jam-packed island last night.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We had some
for the first show
last night.
Oh, it was crazy how many viewers we were getting. So thank you, everyone. That was huge.
Hey, Canadians love their Canadian football, right? But
they do.
But actually, Chazzy, I'm just going to throw a question at you the second you sat down. I don't know if you're eating or what you're doing, but that's okay. I haven't had lunch, so neither can you. So when you think about the quarterback position, right? People really talk about, and especially in the Canadian Football League, that is the biggest and most important position in the league. How concerned would you be with a guy like Davis Alexander, who's only started in 5 games in his career? As Lane pointed out, some of it was a little inconsistent, and now he's the guy starting in this season for Montreal, and you've lost some of your receiving core.
I guess we'll find out tonight.
We will find out tonight, right? Because they're playing
no, but I haven't seen too much. How was his pre-camp? Does he look comfortable?
No, not at all.
Uh-oh.
Actually, I was very surprised Montreal didn't play him in the second preseason game.
Yeah, I know, eh?
Because the first one, in his defense, it was raining, and it's hard to set your feet and blah blah blah. But you got to learn how to play. You got to learn how to win when it's raining. And that was against Ottawa's secondary players, and that offense for Montreal did absolutely nothing. So, if I'm the Montreal Alouettes, I mean, you're built around defense, and you did bring in a guy like Sean Oakman to bolster the defensive line, which is a big add-in. But you lost Devilfield, right? You lost
one of my favorite Argos of all time, Mr. Oakman, right? Having a veteran presence in the back end really changes the culture in the dressing room. One thing I gotta say about Montreal, it's kind of interesting. Montreal's in a unique situation. Their biggest move in the offseason was kind of off-field and didn't really affect any other team. Montreal is famous for the giant bullhorns in the stands. And the CFLs did ban those, right? So every team.
Was that the one with the can?
Yes, exactly.
Not the ones with the.
No, the actual can, right? Montreal, for example, Winnipeg lied to the league so much that the league disqualified them from all teams. But I gotta say, our buddy in the Argos, he has a gift from God, and he has the lungs that are humongous, and he could do that without the can. I don't know how he does it, but I told him, dude, you got a gift from God. That is amazing.
And he
You
looked
have
very
lungs
puzzled.
that huge, you can do that. But for the average football fan, you can't do that, right? And Montreal had that big advantage in home field with the cans. So now that that's disqualified, as dumb as it sounds, I think it's going to affect them. I really do.
We know people in Montreal like nice cans, and it does really. But you know what? All
Let's
jokes
say Captain
aside,
Street.
Dan, you're absolutely right. It's going to make the stadium quieter. Let's just be honest here. Montreal was able to draw a lot of penalties for procedure or a time count violation from the opposing team's offense because it was so bloody loud you couldn't think. The Toronto Argos, when they would play a game in Montreal, what their practice is, they would rent these giant speakers and place them all over the practice field with just those horns going off. Because they said we have to be ready for it. But that's a big advantage Montreal has now lost. I mean, I'm assuming the crowd will be rocking tonight in Montreal. Their fan base really comes out strong.
Where did they have them placed in the standings? Was it the bottom half?
No, like the fans would hold them, and then they.
No, I mean in the standings for Montreal, because you're saying if their starters looking jittery, are they projected the bottom half of the league or top half?
No, people are. The thing is, people seem to think Davis Alexander's the guy, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is. I'm not that confident. So right now, I believe by the odds makers, which then again, the odds makers set the Carolina Hurricanes are winning the Stanley Cup. So I mean, actually, you know what? They deserve an honorary clown circus book for that one.
That's right. You will say Montreal, big advantage they have is Moss. Moss is that franchise receiver that not every team in the CFL has. They locked him up for 4 years. He's not going back to the NFL. He's a game-changing receiver. So if Alexander can give him the ball, and if their offensive line gives Alexander enough time to give Alexander to find Moss, that can be a huge game changer. The other thing in Montreal, too, is there's a little bit of drama with the field even. Because right now we play at McGill University, and they got Olympic Stadium, which is a beautiful stadium, holds about 50,000 people. And back in Anfield Cavill days, they would play our playoff games there. And rumors bumbling around because they're selling so well at McGill University that they might re-renovate and move to Olympic Stadium. So between the air horns and drama with where we're even playing, there's a little bit of drama in Montreal off the field. I think that could affect the team.
And now remember, too, they also did cut their top running back in Walter Fletcher. So that's going to be a big thing to see who picks up there. Offensively, losing Cody Fajardo, how is Mr. Davis Alexander going to do it? Dan, you mentioned it's Austin Mack, not Randy Moss, by the way. Randy Moss was a legendary NFL.
Oh, my God, I'm sorry.
Now, they have Jason Moss as their head coach.
That's a blooper reel we could use.
Can you imagine if they had primetime Randy Moss with primetime Anthony Calvillo? That would have been insane.
But that's how good Austin Mack is. It got mixed up with Randy Moss.
So how are you guys in Argoland feeling about tonight, starting in Montreal?
I'm really good as an Argo fan. I feel really good. I mean, Nick Arbuckle's the backup. Yes, we all know, but he did beat out Cody Fajardo and controversially cost his job as the starting quarterback in Montreal. And Nick Arbuckle won us a Grey Cup. And I think at Williams that week, I can't believe we caught Gadeen, Carey, and Brown. But this Williams does look really special. Our mid-defense is amazing with McManus and Judge, probably the best in the league in that category. And, the thing with the Argos is not just the product on the field. It's the culture off the field. Like, Dinwiddie's probably one of the best coaches in the CFL. Besides of probably
O'Shea.
what's this Mego say? Pinball's the best legend of CFL of all time, best GM and president, and they have that winning culture, right? So it doesn't really matter what's on the field. You got that winning culture behind it. We're going to find a way to get something done.
Now,
So even though we lost some key pieces, I still feel confident in them.
I want to quickly come back to Montreal a little bit because I'm just reading here on some pregame notes from Third Down Nation. And did you know Austin Mack is very unhappy that he wasn't listed as a top 50 player?
I don't blame him. I was shocked about that.
I don't know who did that. It's probably people who don't watch football or people who don't know I came back last season. Let's see who finishes top receiver at the end of the season.
Ouch.
So Austin Mack's got a chip on his shoulder. And
Shots fired.
Yeah.
Like in 2023, he had 78 catches, 1,154 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Right. And I mean, last year's numbers were down because he started in the NFL and then he got injured. But it's interesting there to see. But I mean, getting back to Argos a little bit here, and I think maybe it is time soon we move into the Argo portion of our show. And the Toronto Argos are a very different team this year. I'm not saying they're a bad team at all, but they're very different. Right? You have 13 different starters from that Grey Cup group.
Wow.
Right? So your starting running back's gone. Your third string running back is gone. Pretty much your entire defensive line is gone. But you kept most of your offensive line. You kept your quarterbacks. Well, actually, Cameron Dukes is gone. But, I mean, I think Cameron Dukes was more of a product of him just never really, unfortunately, getting the short yardage down.
You kept your wide receivers.
No, Tommy Neal's gone, but yeah, for the most part, you kept your wide receivers.
You kept the big guns, like in Daniels and Koski, right?
And I think
how do you rebuild your defensive line in 1 year?
Well, and the thing is, though, so you guys might not be as familiar with this. The Argos have done this a lot, though, where they have quickly. Everyone said their defensive back situation was going to be garbage last year, and then they created the most turnovers out of any team in the entire league. Now, that could have been from defensive line pressure. But, and now I'm not saying the defensive line is bad in Toronto by any means, right? You still have some very, very talented players. But all I mean is there is a lot of changes to this Argo group from what there was last season. So it's going to be tougher this year, I think, for the Argos. I think they're still going to be a good team. I think they're still going to be very competitive. But to think that they're going to jump right in and dominate the way they did in the Grey Cup last year, it might be a little bit of a rougher road, right? Like your defensive line now is Parrish, Christmas,
he's really good, by the way. So is
Chartfield Jr. Now you do have Anthony Lanier in there as well whenever you want to bring in 5 guys at the line. Now, the big difference is what Dan talked about, though. You got Rutledge, McManus, and Judge as your linebacking core. That is one hell of a linebacking core.
Yeah, wow.
So that's a linebacking core that can be like, look, Lane is so shocked about it, his whole camera shook like a he's just, oh my gosh, what?
I'm just turning it off.
But it'll be interesting to see how can this defensive line do. The Toronto Argos created more sacks than any other team in the CFL last year, right? Where you had Flo and Serezna and Robbie Smith as your 3 key players. Now, Parrish did come in and out of the defensive line last year, so
he's good.
Williams, the same thing.
Yeah, now, he's good too.
The big thing will be for Toronto, and
Christmas is a nice add-on.
Christmas and Lanier and Chartfield are all good defensive linemen.
They're all good add-ons. I'm not saying
the Argo defensive line is bad, but last year was the best defensive line in the league. Is it the best defensive line this year?
Time will tell. A lot of it has to do with coaching too, right?
And it also depends. Let's remind everyone about Ralph Hawley, who's currently in the NFL. It does, as much as I hope this doesn't happen to him, does he get bounced? Right? If he gets bounced and comes back to the CFL, the Argos have his rights. You bring Ralph Hawley back into the system, who was tied for the league in sacks last year with Jake Serezna and Flo. So, that was the Argo defensive line last year. But And do you remember too that Mackay Polk is also not on this team for the receiving core? When you did mention, Dan, the whole receiving core is there. He's your guy that's missing.
Yeah, but good for him making the NFL, making the Atlanta Falcons, I believe. So
Yep, so good for
on
him.
for doing that.
So are there a lot of players right now sort of in that limbo spot of they're about to make a NFL team but still waiting for camp, or like how's that work right now with the
So
CFL
right now what
starting?
happens is those guys will start to go to camp, right? And I'm not talking about Camp Wanawhoop or whatever it is. And or maybe Gravity Falls, for anyone who remembers Gravity Falls. But they will go to these NFL camps, and then if they don't crack the roster, then to come back to the CFL, the team that has their rights has first crack to bring them back into the lineup.
So
That's
what's
what
the
happened to Boston
timeline are you
Mac.
talking? What's the timeline?
Potentially not to almost Labor Day. And that's what's tough for these guys, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
missing half the CFL season basically.
That's what happened to Nathan Rourke last year. It's what happened to Austin Mack. And it's why you're now seeing some guys just not bother going. They're like, you know what, we're happy here in the CFL. We're making an honest living. But I think when you look at the Toronto Argos offense, I think Kevin Mattal, watch for him to have a big year this year. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to step up for this group.
He was on pace to have a big year last year. He just got injured, and that's when.
Yeah, so funny enough, I don't know, you guys might not know this, but Mackay Polk was not supposed to make the Argos last year.
That's right, yeah.
Who ended up having over 1,000 yards receiving. Should have been Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. But
I agree.
But what happened was Kevin Mattal got hurt in training camp. Mackay Polk slotted in, and especially once Chad Kelly got in the lineup, Mackay Polk's explosive speed, Chad Kelly's deep threat arm, it was a match made in heaven. Now, the bigger question is, and Dan, I know you're very confident in Nick Arbuckle, but you also, I think if you could marry Nick Arbuckle and have a white picket fence of 2.5 kids and a dog, you'd be very happy. But Lane, how do you feel if you're looking at the Argos, and do you think that if, let's say, Chad Kelly isn't back for 3 or 4 weeks, how do you think Toronto feels of Nick Arbuckle being their starting QB? Did we lose Lane?
I think it froze. Sorry, what? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That is okay. You know what? You are. You know what? We are just frozen with anticipation.
I'm sorry about that. What was the quick? I lost connection for a second. I'm sorry.
The transmission was slow.
Sorry about that.
That is okay. You know what? I'm just gonna assume. Is Lane wrong? He might be, he might not be. But Lane, I was saying, so Nick Arbuckle is going to be the Argos starting quarterback for this week and probably at least your first 2, if not 3 games. Yes, he won the Grey Cup MOP, but he's never really been a bona fide starter in the CFL. Dan is so comfortable with Nick Arbuckle in there. Dan wants to have him move in and build the white picket fence around him. How are you feeling about Nick Arbuckle being the starting quarterback for the Toronto Argos? At least
I think you guys are. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I would be extremely concerned. Like, yes, he did play well in that Grey Cup game, but I feel like you want. I feel like you want Chad Kelly, right? Like, he's the franchise guy there. It's like, Nick Arbuckle. He's been off and on the roster, right? You guys had him, then you cut him, then you brought him back, right? And mind you, yeah, he did get you a Grey Cup victory, but I just feel like at the same time, it's like I don't feel like he's the guy you want to rely on too long. I feel like you'd want Chad Kelly as your franchise guy, because ultimately he's the guy who's supposed to kind of be the placeholder for that quarterback position. Now, maybe Nick Arbuckle is good enough to carry you guys through that injury of Chad Kelly, or wait till he gets back in there. But I feel like with the competition, especially with the Ticats bolstering their roster, you never know what the Alouettes are doing. The East is getting stronger too, right? You just seen Ottawa play a really good game last night. You don't want to fall behind here, So I don't know how you guys are feeling on that end, but I feel like if I was an Argos fan, which I can't believe I would never be, I feel like I'd want Chad Kelly at least leading the team out there.
So obviously we want Chad Kelly, but you always can't get what you want. And if we can't get Chad Kelly, Nick Arbuckle was a very nice solution.
So I am in the middle between Lane and Dan. Dan, you have argued that Nick Arbuckle could be a starting quarterback in the CFL.
Yes.
Lane, you feel concerned about him playing a couple games. I'm in the middle. Do I think Nick Arbuckle was a starting quarterback on any other team in the CFL? Honestly, maybe Montreal, but that's about it.
Maybe BC? You think BC?
BC, you don't know with Nathan Rourke. But, I mean, realistically, if every
Who would you
player is
rather
playing
have?
up to their potential, I feel that Nick Arbuckle is not your starting quarterback. But he's got enough arm strength that he can stretch the field. He's very accurate. If he can limit the turnovers, which that's kind of been his issue throughout his CFL career, I think you're fine. I think you're okay with Nick Arbuckle being in for a first couple weeks. Now, let's say Chad Kelly's injury expends the longer it goes. Without that really strong defensive line to kind of limit the other team's offense, that's when it becomes harder. Although Nick Arbuckle, as we saw in the CFL playoffs, put up some very good numbers. And even Nick Arbuckle's stats in the CFL last year were quite decent, in the little bit of action he got. So I'm in the middle. I'm not jumping for joy about it, but I also would be more concerned if I was... Okay, nothing against Dustin Crum. I'd be more concerned if I was the Ottawa Red Blacks and I had to put in Dustin Crum or Matthew Schultz for a long stretch than I am with Nick Arbuckle.
Interesting.
Because I think Nick Arbuckle, to Ryan Dinwiddie has coached Nick Arbuckle off and on for 6 years. He knows this. He knows his quarterback. And he really likes this quarterback. There was a reason why they brought him in last year. And also, too, you have that Tucker Horn and Jarrett Dagey, which Jarrett Dagey will be the short yardage guy for tonight. That's actually the position for the Argos I'm really interested to watch.
Yeah.
He looks good.
Short yardage for the Argos last year was a complete disaster. It was god awful.
What do you think? What do you think, Jacob?
What do I think about what?
I think Tucker. Yeah. No, I said I think based on what I've seen, that Tucker Horn, he looks pretty good.
He
is someone that I could see the Argos grooming into a potential starter down the road.
For sure.
He's got a cannon of an arm.
And he can move.
I think working with a guy like Nick Arbuckle, a real vet, is going to help him a lot.
For sure.
Is he a young guy? Is
very young.
Well, he's not like he needs someone to hold his hand across the street young, but he's young enough.
Yeah, I know. From what I've seen, I'd be pretty confident in him as a third string quarterback if things really start to hit the fan there.
The other thing,
I think too, the real question marks in the Argos, well, another one as well. It sounds weird. The Argos have a lot of question marks going into this season. Running back, you have Devontae McCann. I apologize if I pronounced it incorrectly. Everyone was calling him Devontae McMahon last year, and the Argos corrected it. It's Devontae McCann, I believe. So if I'm butchering it, well, call a butcher because I actually could use some dinner. But you have him and you have Williams. Now, Williams was an absolute stud in NCAA. This guy, if he did not get injured, would be in the NFL. So that is the gamble you have taken. It's still the big question mark. Now, mind you, I don't know if you remember this. Kevin Mattal, the side back for the Argos, did actually run a few plays at running back.
He did. He's very good at that.
Like Ottawa does if Barron with Addison. I don't know.
The other thing, too, that you're all forgetting, worst case scenario, if your running backs do suck, you have Grant on your special team.
Grant's not playing this game.
I know. But you can easily put Grant in as a running back. Grant is arguably the best kick return in the league. I would say maybe besides of Leak, because Leak is younger. But he's that good. And don't forget, when it comes to Arbuckle, if Williams is as good as he's predicted to be, and McCann is as good as last year, when Coatsy comes back, you got arguably one of the best wide receivers in the CFL.
No, Coatsy's playing.
Yeah, he is playing. Okay, so you have Coatsy and Daniel as your wide receiver weapons. If Nick Arbuckle can just give him the ball, you'll be okay.
Well, and that's the thing. Nick Arbuckle does have enough strength in the passing game. He's no Bo Levi Mitchell who can rip the whole field in one throw. But he'll stretch the field 30, 40 yards deep and throw sideline to sideline, which they never had that when Cameron Dukes was the starter at times last year. Right. And I will say Devontae McCann was very, very good last year. I thought in the Grey Cup, he arguably was one of Toronto's biggest weapons. I remember one of the 2nd and 17th they were in, and a quick screen pass, and he just darted around everybody. This kid's got a lot of speed. Expect him to be doing kick returning duty tonight as well. And I still have a very odd conspiracy theory that Kadeem Carey is coming back once Chad Kelly is healthy, because they only have 2 running backs on the roster, which is odd. There's usually 3. So I could still see Kadeem Carey coming back in this lineup. But that actually here brings a bigger argument though, actually, that is interesting. And sorry, I'm going to talk about the Argos a lot right now. We've had multiple good running backs, right? You had Andrew Harris, AJ Olette, then Kadeem Carey. But there's one thing that stayed the same every single time: the offensive line. Yeah. So what's the bigger piece there? There's only one change to the offensive line this year. What's the bigger piece? Is it the offensive line or is it the running back?
That's a good point, because the running back can't get as much done if it can't get through the line, right? So that's the difference between a 1 and a 2 yard rush versus a 8 or 9 yard rush, basically, right? Which can flip the field and flip the game in a lot of cases.
That's what scares me with Hamilton, right? It's the same thing you just brought up. It's that offensive line. People don't, in football, a lot of people don't give credit to those offensive line, right? Like,
no, they really don't.
I feel like it's a position in football where you don't get that amount of respect that you do when you're a quarterback. Like, especially you see this even in the Super Bowl, right? Like, Patrick Mahomes has talked about, but not to make this about Patrick Mahomes, but just saying it's kind of that same argument, right? When his offensive line couldn't give him any time to make plays in the Super Bowl there. It's not like they were blaming the offensive line. They're blaming Patrick Mahomes, and this goes into all of football, right? You don't blame the guys that they're front line. You're blaming the quarterback. You're blaming the running back. But at the end of the day, it's those guys standing on the line, protecting your guys, giving them that chance to make the plays. And I just feel like it's a position, especially in football, that gets very undervalued, yet that position is such a big part of the game. It might even be the most impactful part of the game.
Yeah, 100%.
No, it's very true. I especially in a game that, like, with only 3 downs, 2 yard rushes are not acceptable.
No,
exactly.
So you need that offensive line to push forward. You could at least get 4.5. You need 4.5 per carry, basically, to put yourself in a good position.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you guys this then, since we've now previewed the East and the West. We did the West yesterday for anyone who didn't see it, but we are over 100 views on that episode already, just on Facebook alone. So thank you very much for everyone who watched. Nice Wowzers, work. Dan just made a mess of his trousers.
What? No, we're still dry for now. I'm not backside. We're talking William Nylander, might be a little different.
Okay, number one, you already have Lane Dashing Dashco. You never need to look at William Nylander again. But I want to ask you guys this. Out of the East, because I think we have time before we go off, who in the East will win the East? Who is the best team in the East, do you believe? I'm going to go first, and I'm wearing my Toronto Argo jersey. However, I am making a very odd prediction. The Ottawa Red Blacks, if they can sort out their defensive back situation, will win the East. They were very dominant and very good in the East. If the
off the board,
if Drew Brown is healthy and they just find a little bit of magic in that defensive back group, I think Ottawa is my sleeper pick to win the East. If I am not going a sleeper pick, I am going the Toronto Argonauts. Nothing against Hamilton Lane. I can't pick Hamilton. I'm sorry. I just can't do it. Also, too, there's too many questions for me with Hamilton and their offensive line and lack of experience at running back. And also, too, can Tim White become Tim Mitchell? Can Bo Levi Mitchell and Tim White become one human being and connect? We haven't seen that yet. Will we see it? I don't know. If we do, Hamilton could. But those are my kind of 2 options there.
Save that clip, because I think you'll deserve a circus book in a future episode for that. I think you're back off.
Who thought Winnipeg, after starting 2-6, were going to win the division? Anything can happen. Timothy went to school today, ladies and gentlemen. But Mr. Moore, for your money.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming I know your pick for the East. But
Argos, and not because of all the question marks on the field because of winning culture off the field. I think pinball and Dinwiddie make that big of a difference to get it done. They're building a dynasty. They can make a third Grey Cup appearance. Then you can argue a dynasty move. And yeah, this Cole Argo group in the past 5 years or so, I think it's a dynasty group. So maybe I'll deserve the circus book because they do have a lot of question marks on the field. A lot of players lost and a lot of new players in. I think it's going to start the season off rough. But after Labor Day, I think we're going to get Golwolling locked in and win the division.
Before I ask Lane and Chazzy, I do want to bring up maybe this is going to hurt my take even more about the Ottawa Redblacks being my sleeper pick. Okay, I gave you a sleeper pick first. The self-proclaimed sports analyst, aka the producer, aka the man who never sleeps, is allowed to make more picks than everyone else because
you're not the man who never sleeps. Chazzy never sleeps. You sleep like a baby, bro.
I do not sleep like a baby. But Bob Irving talked about this, who's a legendary CFL analyst. And Drew Brown threw for 413 yards, 2 touchdowns, but Ottawa had no running game. The Redblacks took 12 penalty, while Sask only took 5. That's not going to work. I'm seeing some people on CFL chatter saying that Bob Dice should be fired.
What?
I would not fire Bob Dice over one game. Calm the heck down.
Holy cow.
But fire your coach after one game.
I think that's a little. I think CFL chatter. Club, I'm sorry, boys. You deserve the circus book for that.
Well, they were even in that game, no?
They were. And now, mind you, the penalties were a huge problem. And also, too, you didn't have a running game, I think, in that one because you went down so early. But I'm still sticking with my potential sleeper pick as the Ottawa Redblacks. Mr. Dashing Dash Co. Man, I just realized something. You sound like a clothing line. Mr. Dashing Dash Co.
Oh, yeah, it could be.
Lane, you really should start a clothing line for dashing men only. But
talk to John, right? John's starting a bikini line. Maybe you two can work something out.
We don't want to see Lane in a bikini. I'm sorry, Lane.
No, but you can recruit some nice models.
Okay, but Lane, since Dan wants to see you in a bikini, I think Dan needs.
That's not what I said.
Dan needs to leave the screen. But Lane, who are you taking as your pick? Lane, who would be your pick to win the East?
It's our year, baby. Let's go. No, I hope the Hamilton Tiger Cats win, but I'm actually gonna go against all of my beliefs. I'm gonna say the Argos might actually win. Even though it pains me to say that, but I do think you guys, like Dan Morris said, you guys have a good team there. You got a lot of good building. Your defense is strong. Your offense is strong. You guys have been in the Grey Cup picture. You guys got good chemistry up there with the president and everything. I think, even though it kills me to say it, I can't believe I'm saying it. I do think the Argos will win, but I think the Ticats are going to be right behind them. And it's still our year.
Wow, interesting. Wow.
So I can't believe
it look even crazier saying Ottawa.
I can't believe.
Wow.
I mean, I can't deny
for that. I've just changed his name key.
No.
Hashtag Argo.
Oh wow. Wait for that to get around the neighborhood.
I kid, Lane. I kid. But I love that I can do things like that. But I mean, it's interesting enough. I am one of the biggest Argo fans you ever meet, and I'm the one that I'm very skeptical on my Argos still. But Mr. Chazzy, 5.56. You're almost up to 5.6. You've had a big update coming up for a while. Who's your pick for the East?
I'm going to go with Montreal.
Whoa.
What
you're saying this kid's showing jitters. We'll see what he's got tonight. But if you're telling me to pick one out of the East, I'm going to go with Montreal.
Wow.
You know what, though? Funny enough, I believe Montreal is one of the odd favorites. And when you look in the power rankings off of TSN, Montreal's rated as the best team going into the season before we had any games played.
Right.
I didn't agree with those power rankings whatsoever, to be completely honest. So maybe we all deserve
take a clip of this by the end of the year.
But now it's time to move over to the Western Conference. We talked about the Western Conference in depth yesterday. So again, if you missed that episode, well, you've been living under a rock. But make sure you give that episode a watch after this one. Here our takes this, and then go back in time. If I can turn back time.
Drive my going 88 miles an hour.
who will win
Gary
the
Flink
West.
if you need a DeLorean.
And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to give you my sleeper pick and my pick. Funny enough, the Calgary Stampeders are currently rated as the worst team in the power rankings. I completely disagree with that. I want to just throw that in right away. I thought Chazzy might have spit out his milk.
Yeah,
but he's not. Maybe he's not drinking
that
milk.
comment.
He already has very strong bones. But my sleeper pick is the Edmonton Elks. If the Edmonton Elks can find a way to make Trey Ford stick and be explosive, the way he can move around in the pocket is second to none. Who needs Michael Vick when you got Trey Ford? That's what the Elks are feeling like right now.
He's SNL when you got Jacob making sweeper picks.
Hey, Jacob, why steal my pick? Come on.
Wow.
Now, you guys can think I'm crazy of that, but they had the best. They had one of the best running games in the entire league last year with Javon Leake and Rankin.
Like
Trey Ford, so Trey Ford is going to be spectacular in two ways: either spectacularly phenomenal or spectacularly terrible. That is the risk Edmonton took this year, somewhat, but they have Cody Fajardo just sitting on the bench, just chilling, holding a clipboard, waiting if that happens. And this Edmonton team is a good team. They're very good defensively. Kicking is an issue. I don't know if they can hit a field goal over 45 yards. We'll see. But I really like this Edmonton team. You got strong running.
They kept Beatty, did they?
You got middle. No, Beatty's no longer there. They cut him because he sucked last year. And you are looking at a defense that likes to tackle more than any other defense. They like to. In the preseason, Nick Anderson had 13 tackles in the first half. In the preseason. This Edmonton team, I think, is my sleeper pick for the West. My non-sleeper pick is the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Oh, boy.
If Trevor Harris can stay healthy, I guess AJ Olette can't. But Houdon ran phenomenal last night. And Trevor Harris is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in professional football history. If Trevor Harris can stay healthy, Emilus can continue to get going. If Mulligan's injury isn't too long, there's a lot of ifs here right now. But I really do feel the Saskatchewan Roughriders are ready to take that next step and become the kings of the West again.
Wow.
That is my take.
Wow.
Mr. Who am I going to go? I don't know. Let's see. Mr. Chazzy. I think I know who your pick is.
Yeah, mine's easy. All we have to do is clean the stables for those Stampeders.
Nice.
So it's interesting. So you completely disagree with TSN's analytics when they say Calgary is the worst team in the league.
Yeah, not listening to the pros on this one. Or so-called pros.
As Austin Mack says.
Football.
Well, yeah, exactly.
They don't even watch football. I will say, in all honesty, though, watching
they
the
threw it in
preseason
some AI
games,
machine and it spat it out.
watching the preseason games, which Dan made fun of me for watching every preseason game, but I watched them anyways. The Calgary Stampeders offense looks deadly. And
no, I didn't make fun of you watching it. It's just the feed was so bad.
Like, what was their reasoning on ranking the Stamps so low?
Because they say it's a huge question mark. Will Vernon Adams Jr. work in Calgary? Oh. And I don't know how that's a question mark. Vernon Adams, everywhere he's gone, whether he stayed or not, he's put up big numbers.
Yeah, exactly. That's a weird question.
If he can stay healthy, which is a big question, which is a question mark, because PJ Walker is their backup. I'm skeptical on him. Just for very lack of a better word, experience. He doesn't have a lot of CFL experience, but
two different styles, no?
Oh, very different. PJ Walker is more of a pocket passer, where VA likes to roam.
Mm.
But yeah, Lane, Chazzy, you are not Lane. You're almost as dashing as Lane, but not quite. I will say I don't think you're out to lunch on your pick, even though the CFO analyst might be. But hey, I'm a self-proclaimed sports analyst, so I know more. Mr. Dashko, who do you take as your team from the West?
Well, I'm not even going to tiptoe around like you, Jacob. I'm going to plant my feet stern to the ground. This ain't no sleeper pick. This is the true prediction. The Edmonton Elks, I believe.
Wow.
Oh.
I'm putting a stamp on it. Can put it beside my name. Edmonton Elks #1 fan.
Wow.
I believe in Trey Ford, man. I think that guy's phenomenal, man. You look at him last year, he wasn't given the credit. That was a team that was looking like they weren't even going to – I said it before. They looked like the team. They weren't even going to win a game they bring Trey Ford in, and all of a sudden they look like a playoff contender. And now he's got a full year with the team in belief. And like you said, even if he doesn't work out, even if things start to go south, they got Cody Fajardo just sitting there looking pretty, reading magazines to people in the crowd. They can just bring him in and be like, well, why don't you come in and try have some fun? They got I think they got the best quarterback duo in the CFL by none. You got one of the young up and coming Trey Ford. You got Cody Fajardo, who's got a lot of experience, veteran leadership. He's gonna bring a lot. He's gonna even mentor Trey Ford there. This team is hungry. They've been in the basement a lot for a lot of years. I think they're ready to get out of that, to reclaim their glory days back in the early 2000s when they were a really good team there. I think this team is ready to get back in the fight here and be a high playoff contender.
Whatever happened to their GM and his comments before the season?
Now that's one thing that's interesting about how the GM said that there are no star talent, no superstars in the CFL. That's what made Eugene Lewis walk, by the way. That's what Eugene Lewis is like, okay, bye.
And new ownership in Edmonton too.
Well, there's new ownership in Edmonton, and honestly,
they should work in a favor, but still.
Will this make the players just motivated to prove him wrong?
Maybe.
I don't know. And also, too, I don't know how much players care about what the GM says.
No, I don't care my boss.
Unless you're Jake Ottinger, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later, which we will be going live again for the Oilers pregame show. You're going to be sick of our faces. But then again, no one can be sick of Lane Dashing Dashko. But, Mr. More for your money.
Saving the best to last, eh?
Drum roll.
The interesting thing is here, so far, no one has taken the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So
well, no, you didn't let me speak,
is that who you're taking? Or are you going off the board as well? We've all gone off the board.
No, I'm
taking
taking the easy answer. I don't know why the easy answer was left for last, but I'll take it since it's still available. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Safe pick, Dan. Safe pick, Dan.
But is it though? Cody, Zach Guerreros is getting older. Okay, Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg has a lot to prove this year because everyone's arguing over not dynasty because they lost in the Grey Cup. Well, guess what? They still made the dance 5 years in a row. Let's make it 6 a year. Whoa, and don't forget they're hosting it this year, so there's a lot more motivation for them to make the Grey Cup and not just make it, but win, baby, win.
How many cups do they have in the last 5?
2. They beat Hamilton twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like, I really think Winnipeg is the top team. Yeah, they lost some pieces, but it's the same. They got the same as the Argos, I hate to say it, but they got the off-the-field winning presence. They got Mike Osei. They lost Buck Pierce, which sucks. We got Mike Osei. They got they're on the field. They got Zach Guerreros, Brady Alvera, Willie Jefferson. Okay, I'm shocked if they lost Adam Baco. I'm shocked no one signed him yet. But anyway, I really think Winnipeg's still the best team here.
So my big question is here: no one picked the BC Lions.
No. They suck. And I love BC. I love the fact of Whitty and Snoop Dogg. I love they got the whole West Coast vibe. The whole West Coast vibe, Hawaiian t-shirts, blonde surfer dudes. I love the whole thing. But we're the worst team. I will say Vancouver, I've been in Vancouver quite a bit. They really support their CFL team. You walk downtown Vancouver, they got BC Lions stuff all over the place. They really support it. They give them tons of respect for that. The field is beautiful. Matter of fact, I snuck into the field when it was closed. Got kicked up by security. It's a bad idea. But hey, I tried every door handle I found when it was open. Got a couple cool pictures and I left. Okay, that was all fun.
So, interesting thing enough, we have a comment via the Streakers Island text line. And they are saying we are all out to lunch and BC is the best team in the CFL.
Wow.
Who said that?
And Nathan Rourke is going to go back to the way he was a couple years ago.
He could.
He very well could. I think the BC Lions, they will either be fighting for first or just fighting to win a couple games.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be mediocre again. I think they're either going to be dominant or terrible.
Yeah.
Would you guys agree with me there, BC? Dominant or terrible? I don't.
I agree with that 100%.
I don't think there's a middle ground with that group. But I think we'll save the top 20 players in the CFL for another day because we need to take a break, prep for the Oilers, and then come back live at around 7:15 to get you ready to go for that game. I don't think we can really
much
talk
of a
about
break.
You're a break.
How do I take time for a poo-poo and dinner that little amount of time?
Eat while on the toilet.
Ew, no thanks.
Well, yeah, then it's just ready to release. But thank you very much for watching the Streakers Island podcast. We'll be back in about half an hour. And when we come back, we will preview the Oilers versus Panthers. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the Pete DeBoer situation because that's just another big thing in the NHL that I think's got to be addressed. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst. Beside me is the most dashing man of all, Lane Dashing Dashko. We have Mr. Moore for your money.
Woo!
And, of course, we have the man who puts the capital E in CEO, Chazzy 5.56. Until next time, we'll see you in about half an hour.